Hello there, my stamping friends. It's Jackie Bolhuis from Klompen Stampers. I am back with the second video in my little, we'll call it a mini series, talking about all the different basics of card making. Now, last week we talked all about stamps. I shared tons of tips for photopolymer versus the cling mount, the clear mount, how to get your stamps to stick to your blocks better, how to get things straight, how to cut your stamps apart. There was a whole bunch of hacks when it comes to your stamps. So if you missed that video, make sure you go back and get that one. Now, today we're talking about cardstock, and we're talking about it really from two different angles. How to make your card base, like I like to call it, how to take an 8.5 by 11, score it, cut it for your cards, because that's an essential skill. We all need that, right? And then the most important part, and I get asked this all the time, how to figure out what size to cut your layers. Now, there's no right or wrong reason. I'm just going to share the way I do it. And hopefully it will help you understand a little bit better how easy it is to determine the size of your layers. I've got all kinds of measurements for you that I'll have over on my website. Now, this video, as well as every video I do a corresponding blog post. So you'll find the link to that down in the description of the video. Click on it, it'll take you over to that blog post, and over there you will see all kinds of tips that go along with what I share today. Usually I say pictures of the cards I share, but I'm not really stamping a card. So I'm going to show you some cards though, so don't go away. But I'll have over there all the different measurements that I use for making my layers, along with a couple of cutting diagrams and stuff to help you in your card making. Now, if you're a brand new beginner stamper card maker, this video will be perfect for you to help you get started. And if you've been creating for a long time, I hope you pick up some tips as well to make card making easier for you. We're always looking for tips. I feel like we can always learn those little golden nuggets. So I hope you stay with me no matter what your level of card making and stamping is. So also, when you go over to that website or the blog post, that's where you can request a Stampin' Up! Catalog from me if you don't already have a demonstrator, or if you would like to place an order for any Stampin' Up! Products. I would love to be your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. It's because of you, my valued customers, that I can bring 2 to 3 videos every single week to you, showing quick and easy card making ideas and how-to videos like what we're doing today. So thank you in advance to those of you that select me to be your demonstrator. Phew, we're not here to talk, we're here to dig deep into how to cut cardstock. So let's flip the camera down and let's get started. Now let's start by just talking about really the 4 kind of basic cardstocks to make your card bases with, and that's kind of what I like to call them. Now there's all kinds of specialty cardstocks and papers, and we're not going to really get into that today because we got to start with the basics. So one, colored cardstock, and it comes in so many beautiful colors that coordinate with all the Stampin' Up! Products. I just happen to grab Rich Razzleberry here. Then we have our basic white, and there is the basic white regular, you can see it's a little floppy, and the basic white thick. Now, you can use this for your card bases, the regular, but if I'm going to make a card base out of white, I like to use the thick. It is actually a little bit thicker than the colored, which the colored is certainly thick enough, but it just gives your card a little bit more substance to it. This is a little bit thinner. I think this is great for any images that you're stamping and cutting out or punching or layers on your card. This is an awesome white cardstock. But if you're just going to make a card, I just personal preference, I like that thick better. And then it also comes in the vanilla. So we have the regular vanilla and the vanilla thick. I don't use vanilla a lot. I'm kind of a basic white gal here. So we are going to set these aside, and we're going to actually play with our colored piece because that's a little bit more exciting. I make a lot of cards with a colored cardstock as the base to my card. Now, 8.5 by 11. So to make 2 cards, all we need to do is cut this in half, and that gives us our normal card size, a card size that will fit in the medium-sized envelopes that Stampin' Up! Sells. Now, it doesn't make any difference. You can either cut it this way or you can cut it that way. And you're going to end up with the same size card front, like I like to call it. It's just a matter of how you want your card to open. Now, here's a little tip. If you know you're gonna make 2 cards and you know you're gonna make 2 card bases out of this, I like to score it first. This is kind of a score once, cut once, and you get 2 cards. Now, if we're gonna score this first, we're gonna score down here at 4 1/4. So if you can see my little ruler on my cutter here, you'll notice there's lots of lines. So the quarter are, kind of a little bit bigger ones. You can see 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. So depending on your cutter, get to know that ruler so that you know what's what. And I'm going to use the score blade, and I like to go up and down 3 times. And so now I have a score. And then when I turn it this way, when we're cutting on this long side, which is 11 inches, we need to cut this at 5 1/2. So if I cut it now, we can go ahead and let's just move the cutter, and you'll see we have 2 half sheets scored in the middle, and I can fold these to have 2 card bases. Now, the question I'm asked a lot, which way do I fold this? Because I scored, so it's kind of indented here and kind of a raised up little ridge there. That raised up ridge is what goes on the inside. And then I do like to use my bone folder to just get a nice crisp fold. So here it's kind of sunken in there. It's raised up on that side. Let's flip it over, use our bone folder, and there we have 2 card fronts. Now let's cut one the other way. So on that last one, we scored this way. Now we're going to flip it, and we're going to score at 5 1/2, which is where I cut for the one we just did. And we're going to do the same thing. Let's put a couple good score lines in that. And then we're going to flip it this way. And since this is 8 1/2, we're going to cut at 4 1/4. So you're always doing the same cut and score, 4 1/4 or 5 1/2. Those numbers are kind of your favorite numbers. You should remember those real easily all the time. And now let's get that out of there. The same thing. We're going to put the little ridge on the inside and do that. Now, what I want to show you by cutting these 2 pieces is when they're folded, they are the exact same size as far as what our card front is. And that's where we're going to build all our pretty cards on. So it's a matter of, do you want it to open this way? Or it could even go this way, both of them. But it just kind of gives your card a little bit different personality depending on which way you cut it. But bottom line is, it's the exact same thing. So that is your basic card front. Now, again, if this was white, I would do it out of the thick. Now, whenever I use colored cardstock for my cards, I always like to put a piece of basic white on the inside. You could stamp your greeting in here and sign it in there, but I think putting that white in there just really makes it feel like a more finished card, no matter what you put on the outside here. And this, you'll notice it's a little bit smaller. So it is cut what I call a 1/4 inch smaller. So we know this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So when I cut this, it's going to be 4 by 5 1/4. So it's a 1/4 inch shorter on both sides, and then that will fit nicely on the inside. I actually cut a whole bunch of these one time, and I just have a stack of them because I use them so often. So they're always ready to put onto the inside of my card. Now, let's talk about layering, because I think this is where people tend to get kind of confused. Where do you start? There's no right or wrong. I'm just going to share what I like to do. And the one thing I'm a little bit, I guess, kind of passionate about when I layer cards is I like to have an 1/8 of an inch. Actually, it's a 1/16 of an inch border all the way around. So you'll notice, and this size right here is what I use for a lot of my cards. So if this was my white that I was going to say stamp on, it is cut 5 by 3 3/4. Now, there's no magic to these numbers other than the fact that just like on the inside, I like to make it the same amount smaller. And I don't know, this is probably not proper number terms, but the same amount smaller this way as this way. So if this is 5 1/2, this one is 5. If this is 4 1/4, this one is 3 3/4. So both ways, 1/2 inch smaller. Now, if I'm going to layer behind that, I like to layer it what I call a 1/4 inch bigger. Now, I hope I'm not losing you, but I am going to list all these measurements on that blog post for you. So if this was my pretty card front and I want to back it with something, I go 1/8 of an inch bigger. So we're 5 3 3/4. You'll notice here 1/8 inch bigger is going to be 5 1/8 and 3 7/8. 1/8 inch bigger both ways. And once I layer these and then I stick them on my card, you'll see it is still all kind of, oh, what's the right term? Symmetrical, would that be right? It's, you have the same border all the way around on all of the layers. Now, I know there are some people, and again, I said total personal preference, that they'd rather cut everything in quarters. So they might make a 5 by 3 3/4 layer, and then they're going to put a 5 1/4 by 4. So they're going to step it up by 1/4 of an inch. And all that really does is it gives you a little bit bigger border all the way around your card. Again, complete personal preference. That's why you'll see if you follow me and you check out a lot of the card measurements that I share, whether it's in a tutorial or on a blog post, I tend to do the 1/8 inch ones because I like that little bit smaller, especially of that black, and then a little bit more of that card base. Now, hope I'm not losing you here. And you can see each one of these layers, I've just stepped it up, made it 1/8 inch bigger. So let's say for our card, we want a small focal point. So we're gonna go with 4 1/4 by 3. And again, this is following that same rule. We are 1 1/4 inch smaller on both sides, because 3 plus 1 1/4 would be 4 1/4. 4 1/4 plus 1 1/4 would be 5 1/2. So you can see as we stick this on here, let's get that white out of there, it has the same border all the way around. And now if I want to layer it, we're gonna go 1/8 inch bigger. So 4 3/8 and 3 1/8. And I get that smaller border, and that would be our focal point. Now, again, if you like a little bit bigger of a border, let's see, I cut a whole bunch of these just to be able to play. If I wanted to go a little bit bigger, it would be 4 1/2. Oh, that'd be this one. 1/4 inch bigger, 4 1/2 by 3 1/4. So you can see the difference. I probably should cut those in black so you could see, but it just gives you a bigger border all the way around. So I hope I haven't confused you, because I know numbers confuse people a lot. Let's just kind of rewind a little bit on layers. Number one, this is just Jackie's little principle. Every layer I try to make the same amount, either bigger or smaller, going that way or that way. So we have a 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 base. We could put on here 1/4 inch smaller, 5 1/4 by 4. And then on top of that, we could go a 1/4 inch smaller again with this one. Okay, so I hope that didn't confuse you. So it's a matter of, do you like 1/8 or do you like quarters? Total personal preference. And you can just see, you get see more of the card base that way. So what I've done and what I played with here, and see if we can, I feel like I'm putting together a little bit of a puzzle here. So let's stick these all together. I think that way. There should be a black in there. Oh my, I don't know if I did these right. We'll see. I might have. No, there we go. So when I put them all together like that, you'll see how they kind of fan out, and each one's a little bit layered. And these are all numbered. So this is a template you might want to use for yourself. What I will do on that blog post is I'll show pictures of all of these with the measurements. So if you'd like to cut some cardstock and label it, it'll help you in your card design, because you can be playing around and say, oh, I want a small layer. Ooh, that'll work good with the stamps I have, and play with your layers that way. So I hope that helps you figuring out what size layers to cut on your cards. Now, let's take a look at a couple of cards that I've previously shared with you to kind of see the sizing principle in action. So all these card bases are 5.5 by 4 1/4. Super simple card I made quite a while ago, and I just took a piece of designer series paper, cut it 1/4 inch smaller. So we have 5 1/4 by 4, and that's all the layering we did on that one. Now here, which is a pretty recent one, and I'm going to just double check my measurements. So this is 3 1/4 or 3 3/4 by 5. So it was a 1/2 inch smaller and a 1/2 inch smaller. And then my black layer was just 1/8 inch bigger. So that's where we took, and we could bring our templates back in here if you want. Let's see. So the crumb cake was 5 and 3 3/4, and then because I tend to do the eighths, we went 1/8 inch bigger, 5 1/8, 3 7/8. So layer that together, and that is what made the front of that card. Now here we kind of put it all together. Here you can see there is that larger layer, so we could build it that way. And then I'm thinking, oops, it's not that one. No, I should have measured these. There we go. So this here is 5 1/4 by 3, and then I layered it with, is that the right one? There we go. You can see how these just kind of build, and then this would go onto that card front. Now, if you want, and there's just another one, just showing kind of that layering principle. And you can always tell when you look at a card if you've got even all the way around. Now, if you want to kind of go a little bit different and put, say, a square image, which you can see on these two cards, what I did is this piece, which is square, on both of these, whatever size square we wanted. This looks like 3 1/4. I think that's a 2 3/4. So 2 3/4, 2 3/4. Add 1/8 for that black underneath, which would be 2 7/8 by 2 7/8. And then I tend to, when I mount that on my card, try to kind of eyeball it with equal on top, bottom, and left, giving me room down there. So there, I feel like that was a lot of numbers I threw at you. I hope I tried to make it easy because I know it can be really confusing as to what size to cut your layers for your cards. Again, I'll have all of these measurements over on that blog post, the links down in the video description, and you'll be able to cut some of these and label them if you want to make card making easier for you. I hope you enjoyed this part 2 in my series, kind of sharing all the basics and breaking down card making into all the basics. And then it gave you some good tips to help you for making your own cards. Now remember, if you have any questions, I'm here to help you. I love to interact with you. Read your comments, reply to your comments, or send me an email and I can help you that way as well. I look forward to being your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and helping you in any way that I can. Make sure you come back. Our next video in this series is going to be all about inks, another confusing component of card making. Which ink should I use for what? What ink if I'm coloring? What ink if I'm stamping? What ink if I'm embossing? We're going to break that all down and make it simple for you. So until then, have a stamp happy day.